They always come back, don't they? Maybe not all of them, but the ones who left you with silence, confusion, and 1,000 unanswered questions, they tend to reappear. Suddenly, there they are. A message, a call, a vague, "Hey, you crossed my mind," and just like that your heart starts racing, not because you still need them, but because a part of you still wants to believe this time it means something different. Let's be real for a second. This moment, it's where most people get it all wrong. Society teaches you that when they return, it's a sign that maybe it's fate or proof they've changed, or a second chance worth grabbing with both hands. But let me challenge that. What if their return isn't your new beginning, but a test of everything you've become while they were gone? This isn't about revenge. It's not about punishing them or being cold. It's about clarity, emotional discipline. It's about asking the right questions before you say a single word. Because here's the truth, people don't always come back for the right reasons. Sometimes they come back because their other options failed. Sometimes they return because they miss the way you made them feel, not because they miss you. And if you react too fast, too soft, too familiar, you'll end up reliving the same cycle you already fought so hard to escape. So ask yourself right now, are you really ready to protect your peace? Are you willing to question what you've been taught about closure, timing, and love? Because if you're expecting a fairy tale ending just because they showed up again, you're about to walk into the same fire twice. But if you're ready to learn how to respond from a place of grounded confidence, unshakable worth, and emotional command, this is for you. We're going to dismantle the illusions, one by one. And by the end, you'll understand what real power looks like in the face of their return. This isn't just dating advice. This is the kind of shift that changes how you view yourself forever. Stoicism teaches us that control begins where reaction ends. So what would it look like to respond with awareness instead of emotion, with presence instead of desperation? That's what you're about to unlock. And if you think the best parts are already behind you, think again. The most powerful moment is coming at the end, when you realize they can never hold you the same way again. Stay with me, because what's next will flip everything you thought you knew about Stoic relationships and self-respect. One pause. First, don't jump into emotion. They come back. Maybe it's a whisper through a message, a simple "Hey, stranger," or a phone call at a time you thought you had finally forgotten the sound of their voice. And in that single moment, something inside of you stirs. Your chest tightens. Your mind floods. Your emotions, no matter how deeply buried, begin clawing their way to the surface. You feel everything all at once: excitement, confusion, fear, nostalgia. The impulse to respond is almost magnetic, like muscle memory. But here's where most people fail the test. They react instead of reflecting. They jump without pausing. And what happens when you do that? You invite the past right back into your present. But pause, really pause, and ask yourself, why am I feeling this? Is it truly them I miss, or the idea of being wanted again? Is this genuine hope, or a knee-jerk craving for comfort? Stoic relationships demand stillness before reaction, space before response, because the very first moment they reach out is not a moment to celebrate, it's a moment to observe. And here's the truth. If you don't interrupt that emotional reflex, you'll find yourself right back in their emotional loop. You've got to break the narrative that responding quickly shows strength, or that not replying means you're weak. Silence, even hesitation, is not weakness. It's power in disguise. The first act of reclaiming your emotional control is to buy yourself time. Not because you're playing games, but because you're anchoring yourself in self-respect. Let's be honest. They left. For days, weeks, months, you heard nothing. No check-ins, no clarity, just space and silence that you had to fight through to find your own footing again. So now that they've suddenly decided to re-enter your life, why should your heart run to meet them at the door? That pause, that one moment where you resist the urge to respond immediately, is where everything shifts. It's where you break the pattern. Most people fear that hesitation because it feels uncertain, but the Stoic understands that uncertainty is where wisdom lives. That silence is not avoidance, it's awareness. So ask yourself, what version of me would have replied instantly? And is that version someone I ever want to be again? Would the healed version of me chase a moment just because it feels familiar? This is not about punishing them for leaving. It's about protecting the version of you that had to crawl through your own wreckage to rebuild. You don't owe anyone instant access to your heart, especially not someone who once treated it like it was optional. This is where you set the tone, not with words, but with your restraint. And this is hard, it's deeply uncomfortable. Your heart will scream, your ego will want to prove you're over it. But neither of those forces should be steering the ship anymore. In Stoicism, emotional stillness is a virtue. And in Stoic relationships, discipline is more sacred than desire. You do not respond just to soothe them. You do not respond just to see where it might go. You respond only when you've anchored yourself in truth, your truth, not their timing. Because when you jump, you teach them that your boundary was never real, that your silence was just a waiting room, that your self-worth is available on demand. But when you pause, when you let them feel your stillness, that's when they realize something has changed. And here's the uncomfortable part. Maybe they don't like that. Maybe your pause will frustrate them, but that frustration is revealing. If your silence bothers them more than their absence bothered you, what does that say about their real motives? Are they here for you or for control? And are you brave enough to let the silence stretch long enough to find out? Every second you don't respond becomes data. Every moment of your restraint gives you clarity. Watch how they handle your boundary. Watch what they do in the silence. Do they follow up with vulnerability, or do they vanish again when you don't? Give them instant gratification. If they do vanish, then let them. That's not loss, that's confirmation. You just filtered out a test without speaking a single word. The old version of you would have chased that message with hopeful excitement. But the new you, the one who's been learning, healing, evolving, knows that the fastest response is often the most expensive. You've paid that price before. You know how it ends. This time, you stay grounded. This time, you pause, not just to protect your energy, but to assert your transformation. And if you're worried they'll take your pause as disinterest, ask yourself, do I want someone in my life who demands instant emotional access without earning it? Because anyone worth re-entering your world will honor your silence. They won't pressure it. They won't manipulate it. They'll respect the fact that you're not who you were when they left. This is where the dynamic begins to shift. This is the first boundary. This is the moment they start to realize that the emotional version of you, the one who replied too fast, too warmly, too willingly, is gone. Not bitter, not cold, but grounded, aware, unshakable. This is what Stoicism looks like in love. It's not icy, it's intentional. It's the decision to place your peace above your past. And when they return, that peace is the first thing they'll feel, not desperation, not confusion, stillness, presence, strength. The kind that doesn't need to shout or explain. And if they can't handle that stillness, if it makes them uncomfortable, good. Because the person who left shouldn't find it easy to re-enter. If they're not coming back with consistency, with care, with clarity, they don't belong anywhere near your heart. And your pause, it's what will protect that heart. You've done the work. You've earned your calm. So when that message comes in and your breath catches, don't rush, don't type, don't relive it, just pause. Let that pause be your protector. Let that silence speak for the version of you that finally understands not everyone deserves a reply, and definitely not the same version of you they left behind. That version is gone, and the moment you pause, they'll start to feel it. That's where your power begins. 2. Question their timing, not just their words. Let's say you paused, you didn't jump, you held your silence like armor, and now here you are, they're still trying. They followed up. Maybe now it's a longer message, maybe it sounds heartfelt, maybe it's filled with what they think. You've been waiting to hear, "I've been thinking about you. I realize what I lost. You've always meant something to me." The words hit, don't they? They hit deep, because they sound like hope. They sound like clarity. But here's the thing. Stoicism teaches us that emotions without context are dangerous, and the most dangerous emotion in this moment is blind belief. So before you let those words carry you off into a fantasy of second chances, ask the question most people are too scared to face. Why now? Why not during the silence? Why not when you were crying on the bathroom floor at 2 a.m., wondering if you mattered? Why not when you reached out and they didn't reply? Why now that you've finally started to heal? Why now that your glow is back? This is what Stoic relationships are built on. Not fantasy, but forensic awareness. Timing is not neutral. Timing is a signal. It reveals things that words try to cover up. So again, ask yourself, why didn't they say these things sooner? What had to fall apart in their life for you to become a convenient option again? Because if you don't question the timing, you're just buying back into the illusion. Anyone can speak when it's easy, but where were those words when it was hard? Where was their clarity when you needed it? And if they didn't offer it then, what makes you think their return now is about you and not about their own emptiness? People come back when life humbles them, when their choices collapse, when their loneliness grows louder than their pride. But just because they show up with words doesn't mean they've arrived with truth. So question the timing. Examine the silence that preceded this return. Let it matter. Because if you ignore that silence, if you minimize what you endured just to hear from them again, you betray the version of you who fought to stay upright without their help. And that's a betrayal Stoicism doesn't tolerate. Look at the contrast. When you were breaking, they vanished. And now, when you're standing again, they knock. Convenient or calculated, don't ignore the discomfort of that truth. Let it sting, because the sting wakes you up. It reminds you, you are not just someone's fallback plan. You are not the safe option they come back to when chaos doesn't love them back. You are not the hallway light they left on. You are not a memory. They can't rewind you. You're real. You've evolved. And if they couldn't honor that reality when you were struggling, what makes you believe they're capable of honoring it now? This is where you turn on the part of your mind they didn't expect you to use. Not your heart, your clarity. When someone shows up with sweet words, ask, why do these words only exist now? And what didn't they say then when it could have made a difference? Are they acknowledging your pain? Or are they just trying to bypass it with romantic shortcuts? Don't settle for declarations. Ask for reflection. If they're not referencing the damage they caused, the silence they gave, the confusion they left you in, then those sweet words are just bait, and your hope is the hook. Don't get reeled in. You don't need to be angry, just be aware. Stoic relationships don't erupt. They observe. They analyze. They hold back from emotional conclusions and lean into data, and the data of timing never lies. If they were capable of disappearing during your storm, they are capable of doing it again. Especially if you make it easy, especially if you fall. For the illusion that presence now makes up for absence then, it doesn't. That absence shaped you. It broke something in you, and that break led to your awakening. Don't undo that awakening just because someone is whispering old dreams in a new tone. Ask them, why now? And if they deflect, if they minimize the gap between their silence and their sudden sweetness, there's your answer. They're not back for you. They're back for the way you made them feel. Comfort, certainty, devotion, attention. But none of those things are love. And none of them are your responsibility to provide just because they feel lost now. Let them be lost. You were. You didn't get to text your way out of it. You didn't get to call someone and fix your mistake with 3 sentences and a promise. You had to sit with yourself. You had to grow. You had to heal. That healing wasn't free. It cost you nights of anxiety, days of second-guessing your worth, weeks of rebuilding your identity brick by broken brick. So why would you sell all of that progress for the price of a few sweet words now? You're not here to rescue them from their own reckoning. You're not here to provide spiritual comfort to someone who abandoned you emotionally. You're here to protect your progress, to guard your evolution, and that begins by questioning everything, not from paranoia, but from awareness. Timing is truth. And if the timing says they only show up when things collapse in their world, you've got to wonder, are they here to build or just to rest in what you've already rebuilt? And let's be honest. If someone's love is real, it doesn't wait for convenience. It doesn't need crisis to awaken. It moves toward you even when it's uncomfortable, especially when it's uncomfortable. And if they didn't do that before, they might not know how to do it now. So don't fantasize. Don't romanticize a return that lacks accountability. Hold them to their timing. Hold them to the version of themselves that left you waiting. That version didn't disappear, and if you don't see radical change in their presence, behavioral, emotional, verbal, then you are not looking at a new beginning. You're looking at a repeat, and you've already lived that chapter once. Ask yourself, was the ending of that chapter worth rereading? Was the pain worth revisiting? Is the part of you that healed worth risking again just to chase the ghost of who you thought they could be? Or are you ready to choose awareness over addiction? Because that's what it is, a kind of emotional addiction to a person who once felt like home, even though they left the house in ashes. Stoicism doesn't ask you to stop feeling. It asks you to stop reacting. You can feel it all, the ache, the hope, the curiosity, and still choose silence. Still choose questions over assumptions. Still choose stillness over surrender. This is what power looks like. Not a loud refusal, but a quiet refusal to be hypnotized by bad timing and beautiful words. This is your test, not just of patience, but of vision. Can you see through the words? Can you listen beyond the voice? Can you examine the space between what they're saying and when they're saying it? Because if you can, you'll save yourself years of emotional recycling. You'll sidestep a heartbreak you've already lived. You'll prove to yourself that you've learned something invaluable from the silence they gave you. You'll prove that their absence didn't destroy you, it defined you. So next time they reach out and their message sounds like a dream come true, don't rush, don't hope, just hold, just pause, just question. That one internal question, why now, is a force field. It shields you from manipulation. It filters false promises. It protects the new version of you that's finally learned to be whole, alone. And if they truly see your worth now, they won't fear that question. They'll answer it, they'll honor it, they'll own their absence. And if they don't, then their return is just noise, a distraction, an emotional test dressed in nostalgic packaging. And the Stoic doesn't fail that test. The Stoic doesn't chase comfort. The Stoic stands still and lets time tell the truth. If you felt this message, if you're walking through this storm or coming out the other side, let me know in the comments. Type number 1 if this spoke to something in you. And if this resonates, like the video and subscribe, because we're not just surviving heartbreak here, we're learning to master it. You don't need more chances, you need more clarity. And that starts with one question: why now? 3. Let their effort reveal their true intentions. So they're back. You've paused. You've questioned the timing. And maybe they've stuck around a little longer than expected. Maybe they're still texting, still reaching out, still dropping signs that they're serious this time. But before you lean into the idea that their consistency means something sacred, take a breath, step back, and shift from listening to watching. Because here's where the illusion often creeps back in. When words echo often enough, we start mistaking them for action. But Stoicism reminds us, truth isn't spoken, it's demonstrated. You don't need to interrogate their motives with endless questions. You don't need to demand answers or sit through emotional monologues. You just need to stop filling the space. Don't explain, don't initiate. Don't give away your energy like it's still free. Just watch, because people show you exactly who they are when you stop helping them tell the story. When you become still, you turn into a mirror. And in that mirror, they either reflect effort or excuses. They either follow through or fade out. They either meet your energy or reveal they were only there for a quick emotional fix. This is where so many people get pulled back into the same loop. They mistake the return for commitment, but a return is not commitment. A message is not investment. A phone call is not proof. Effort is consistent, measured, respectful effort. The kind that doesn't disappear when you don't reply. The kind that keeps showing up without reward. The kind that doesn't need you to lower your standards to stay interested. And this is what makes Stoic relationships different. There's no begging, no hoping, no chasing. Just watching. You let the data tell the story. You stay quiet long enough to see the pattern emerge, because if their effort is real, it won't vanish when they don't get what they want right away. If they care, they won't ghost you again the second you don't answer with heart emojis or vulnerability. But if their effort fizzles out the moment you stop feeding it, that's not love. That's convenience. They were never here to build something. They were here to see if the door was still cracked open. And when they realize it's not, they move on. Not because they're hurt, but because they weren't serious to begin with. You've got to be brave enough to see that. Brave enough to believe what the silence reveals. Brave enough to admit that sometimes they were never yours. They were just borrowing your love until it wasn't exciting anymore. So you stop responding emotionally. You stop chasing confirmation. You stop making it easy for them to slip back into a role they walked away from. If they want access, they earn it. Slowly, respectfully, through actions, through presence, through patience. Not through perfectly timed texts or poetic apologies. You've heard those before. You lived through the gap between what they said and what they actually did. And if you've grown, you won't ignore that gap this time, because this version of you, she's not impressed by words anymore. She's fluent in action. She doesn't read messages. She reads behavior. She doesn't dream about the past. She evaluates the present. And here's the thing, they know that. The second they realize you're no longer available on emotional credit, the ones who came back out of boredom will vanish. Let them. That's not a loss. That's divine filtration. That's life doing for you what your heart may not be strong enough to do yet. The right person will respect the pause. The right person will move slowly with you. They will build brick by brick, not demand shortcuts through your vulnerability. But you'll never know who they are unless you hold still long enough to observe. That's the discipline, that's Stoicism in motion, stillness that reveals truth. You are not cold. You are not playing games. You are protecting your peace by watching who deserves to sit at your table now. Because too many people are good at coming back, but terrible at staying. And the only way to separate the two is by removing your emotional crutches. No reminders, no just checking in, no rescuing the connection with long, heartfelt replies. You stay grounded in the reality of what they're doing, not what you hope they'll become. You don't respond to intention, you respond to demonstration, and you give it time, because time is the greatest lie detector. Anyone can keep up an act for a week, a month, but can they keep showing up when you don't give them instant validation? Can they remain consistent when your energy doesn't feed theirs? That's when the truth reveals itself. And here's where you must be ruthless with your peace. Don't confuse persistence with value. Don't confuse effort that's inconsistent with effort that's real. Because real effort doesn't come and go. It doesn't require reminders. It doesn't ask for forgiveness before it's earned. It stays steady even in your silence, especially in your silence. That's how you know, not by how much they talk, but by how much they show when you stop giving them emotional prompts. Let them navigate this new version of you. Let them earn every layer back. Because the woman you are now, she doesn't just hand out access because someone said they missed her. She doesn't drop her standards because someone claims they're sorry. She observes, she evaluates, she lets time sort what her heart used to chase. And if they can't handle that, if they get impatient or accusatory or pull away again, then they were only here for the performance, not the partnership, and you deserve more than that. You've rebuilt yourself on truth. Don't let soft words tear down the walls you had to bleed to raise. Ask yourself, are they showing up with humility, or are they just trying to re-establish control? Are they consistent when I'm calm, or only when I'm reactive? Are they comfortable with the boundaries I now have, or are they trying to charm their way around them? The answer will not come through conversation, it will come through observation. So don't talk, watch, don't push, wait, don't fantasize. Examine. Let their consistency tell the story. Let their actions become your proof. Let the space between your responses create clarity. Because real love, real remorse, real change, it survives silence. It endures the waiting. It doesn't rush you back to the past. It walks with you into the present. But you'll only know that if you stay disciplined enough to let the show unfold. If you stay still long enough to see what happens when you're no longer driving the emotional connection. This is the part most people skip. The uncomfortable part, the quiet part, but this is also the part where the truth lives. Not in what they say, but in what they do when they think you're watching, because you are, with calm, with clarity, with self-control. This is your new language now, not over-explaining, not proving, not justifying your standards, just stillness, just watching. And in that space, their true intentions have nowhere to hide. 4. Don't offer the same access twice. You don't owe them the same version of you they left. Let that sink in before we say anything else, because the moment someone who abandoned you reappears, the part of you that craves resolution, comfort, familiarity, it wants to hand them back the same seat at your table, the same key to your energy, the same unguarded access to your soul. But here's the truth. If you offer the same access again, you invite the same pain. If you welcome them in like nothing ever happened, you're telling them they can leave and return as they please, that your heart is a revolving door and your peace is negotiable. And that is not self-respect, that is self-abandonment. In Stoic relationships, you don't confuse kindness with naivety. You don't let the fact that someone came back override the memory of how easily they left. You don't disregard your own healing just to make them comfortable. Because comfort is what got you hurt the first time. You made it too easy, too safe, too predictable. And when people don't fear losing you, they don't value keeping you. So this time, everything changes. Access is not a reward for returning. It's a privilege that must be re-earned, slowly, intentionally, through effort, not emotion, through consistency, not charm. Because the version of you that waited for closure, who forgave too fast, who bent to fit back into their world, she doesn't live here anymore. She grew through the pain. She rebuilt her identity. She found her peace in silence, and now she knows. Letting someone back in is not the same as giving them back everything. And here's where the world will try to confuse you. Society romanticizes the return. Movies glorify it, songs celebrate it, but Stoicism cuts through the fantasy. It says, look not at the gesture, but at the gap. Look not at the words, but at the consistency. Look not at who they are now, but at who they chose to be when you needed them most. Did they abandon you during the storm? Did they leave when your love was unconditional? Did they go quiet when things got real? If the answer is yes, then you do not give them open access again. You give them boundaries. You give them slowness. You give them the weight of the space they walked out on. Because if you erase the consequences of their leaving, they will never learn the cost of losing you. And here's something no one wants to admit. If they don't have to earn you back, they never truly felt the loss. If you let them re-enter without tension, without caution, without change, you make the mistake of teaching them that your healing was just a waiting room. But healing is not passive. It's work, and that work deserves protection. It deserves reverence. So ask yourself, what message does it send when I make it easy for them to return? Does it say I've grown, or does it say I'm still the same? Because real growth is felt, not explained. It's in the way your boundaries are now non-negotiable. It's in how you move slower, ask more questions, hold your standards higher. It's in how you no longer overgive just to feel chosen. They might come back expecting the old version of you, but you don't shrink to fit their memory. You make them rise to meet your reality. That's the shift, that's the power. You are no longer chasing connection. You are vetting consistency. You are not a reward for their return. You are a reflection of what they walked away from. And that reflection should feel different, sharper, more focused, more distant. Not bitter, just unavailable to anything less than what you deserve. That doesn't mean you're cruel. It doesn't mean you're closed off. It means you're careful now. It means your peace matters more than their nostalgia. It means your time is earned, not handed out like emotional samples. And if they're serious, they'll understand that. They won't rush you, they won't pressure you, they won't say you've changed like it's a bad thing, because you have changed. That's the whole point. And if they don't recognize that change, if they resist it or try to pull you back into old patterns, then they're not really back for you. They're back for a feeling, and that feeling doesn't pay the rent in your new life. That version of you, soft, desperate, emotionally exposed, is gone. And if they want to meet the person you are now, they have to earn their way back. Not through charm, not through guilt, but through sustained, self-aware effort. Access is earned, not assumed. Access is sacred, not sentimental. And this applies to everything. Your time, your attention, your physical closeness, your emotional intimacy. You don't text back instantly. You don't drop everything to see them. You don't reprioritize your healing journey to accommodate their sudden return. You watch. You pace. You protect your rebuilt world with the same discipline you used to create it. Because here's the truth. If they left once, they can leave again. And if there are no consequences for the first exit, there will be no hesitation for the second. You want to know why cycles repeat? It's not because people don't change. It's because they're not required to. When you give them the same access, you remove the tension. When there's no tension, there's no growth. When there's no growth, the story ends the same way. Again. So don't write the same ending twice. Make them work for the rewrite. Let them earn the right to call you again. Let them feel the unfamiliarity of this new version of you. One that's no longer desperate. One that no longer explains. One that no longer bleeds just to feel seen. You don't need them. You don't need closure. You don't need to recreate what once almost destroyed you. What you need is peace, protection, standards. And if they can't meet those standards, then they're not ready to re-enter your world. They're not ready for the evolved you. So don't bend, don't soften to accommodate their fear of effort. Let them feel what it means to lose access to someone sacred. Let them sit with that. Let them taste the same uncertainty they once fed you. That's not revenge. That's balance. That's the Stoic path to emotional integrity. You're not punishing them. You're honoring yourself. And if they truly want back in, they'll show up with reverence, with patience, with consistency. Not just once, but always. And if they don't, then they were never here for you. They were here for relief. And relief doesn't deserve the keys to your castle. Let that truth anchor you. Let it protect you. Because what you allow once becomes the new standard. And this time you are the standard. This time your energy is not a public playground. It's protected ground. And anyone who wants to return must step gently, must walk slowly. must carry the weight of what they lost. That's how you break the cycle. That's how you flip the power dynamic. That's how you remind yourself and them that you are not here to be easy. You are here to be honored. So if this message found you at the right time, take a breath. And if you felt the shift inside you while listening, let it echo. Drop a number 1 in the comments if this message spoke to something you've been needing to hear. Like the video to let it spread. And subscribe if you're ready to make this your new emotional baseline, because the next part, it's where your silence becomes your shield, your stillness becomes your strategy, and they finally realize the door they walked through before doesn't exist anymore. 5. Use silence strategically. Silence is not the absence of communication. It is the presence of discipline. It is a decision, not an accident. And in Stoic relationships, silence becomes your sharpest tool, not your softest escape. When someone comes back after walking away, the first thing they look for is familiarity. The comfort of old patterns, the ease of slipping back into a version of you that once over-explained, over-apologized, overshared. But when they're met with silence, not from bitterness, but from control, they feel something they weren't prepared for, the weight of who you've become. Not every silence is passive. Some silences scream wisdom. Some silences cut through years of confusion in a single second. Because when you say nothing, you force them to listen to what's not being said. You make them reflect instead of react. You make them notice, maybe for the first time, what your presence actually meant. And that's the beginning of power. Real power isn't loud, it's unreadable. It's the moment you no longer feel compelled to validate someone who invalidated you. It's the decision to withhold what once flowed too freely, because words, when overused, lose their value. But silence multiplies its meaning, longer it lasts. And the moment they come back expecting dialogue and find stillness instead, that's when the narrative changes. They start questioning, they start doubting, not you, but themselves. They wonder what shifted, what changed, what happened to the version of you who would have replied in seconds. And that wondering, that discomfort, is not your problem to fix. It is your boundary doing its job. Silence gives them space to face themselves. It removes the distraction of your reassurance. And for the first time, they have to deal with the echo of their own choices. No one expects you to go silent when they return. They expect excitement, questions, closure, maybe even confrontation. But they don't expect stillness. They don't expect your restraint, because silence cannot be negotiated with. It cannot be debated or deflected. It is the only response that leaves them to their own reflection. It's not ignoring, it's instructive. It tells them, you no longer have access to my emotions just because you decided to reappear. You no longer control the rhythm of my day just because your name popped up on my screen. You no longer get to disturb the peace I bled to build. And yes, it's hard. Because silence is uncomfortable for the one who has always been the communicator, the empath, the emotional giver. But it's also the only path to clarity, because when you stay silent, they reveal themselves. They either show effort or they retreat. They either rise in consistency or they crumble in confusion. And that tells you everything you need to know without a single sentence. You learn more from their reaction to your silence than you ever did from their words. Because people rehearse words, but reactions are raw, so hold the line. Let the silence stretch longer than feels natural. Let it do the work you used to exhaust yourself doing. Let it answer the questions you no longer need to ask. If they care, they will stay. They will pursue with patience. They will show up without prompting. But if they vanish again when your silence doesn't feed their ego, then let them go, for good this time. That isn't love. That's ego dependency. That's them craving the feeling of being desired, not the responsibility of being accountable. You are not here to be someone's emotional Wi-Fi, something they reconnect to when life offline becomes too difficult. You are not the safety net they bounce back to after falling from choices they made without you. You are not an emotional vending machine dispensing comfort on demand. Your silence reminds them of that. It forces them to earn what they once took for granted. It sends a message. I'm no longer available just because you remembered I exist. I'm no longer waiting on the other end of a message hoping this time you'll mean it. My time, my energy, my presence, they are sacred now, and silence is. How I protect them, and still it's tempting to break that silence. To send one last message for closure, to ask one final question, to confirm that your growth means something to them. But Stoicism reminds you, closure is not a conversation, it's a decision. It's not what they say, it's what you've come to understand in the absence of what they didn't. You didn't heal, so you could explain that healing to the person who caused the wound. You didn't rise from abandonment, so you could narrate your journey back to the one who left. Your silence is not emptiness, it is fullness contained. It is everything you've learned, unspoken but undeniable. And if they can't feel it, they're not ready to meet the person you are now. And maybe they never were. So let the silence stretch. Let it be the bridge they must cross, not you. Let it be the proof that you've changed, even if your words never say so. And if they grow impatient, if they accuse you of being cold, if they try to guilt you into emotional performance, stay still. Because their reaction is their reveal, and that reveal, it's worth more than any apology they could offer. It tells you whether they returned with respect or with expectation, whether they want restoration or just reassurance, whether they see you as a person or just a pattern they can repeat. And if it's the latter, your silence is your refusal to participate. You're not ghosting, you're guarding, you're not avoiding, you're observing. And what you're watching for is whether their actions match the weight of what they disrupted in your life. Because if they can't sit in silence, they can't sit in the stillness of real love. Real love doesn't panic in the pause. It doesn't push, it doesn't rush, it remains, even in the quiet, especially in the quiet. So let the silence speak. Let it echo the boundary that words often fail to express. Let it whisper the truth. I've changed, and I no longer explain that change to those who didn't stay to witness it. That is what Stoicism looks like in love. Not indifference, but sovereignty. Not numbness, but awareness. You've reached a point where your energy no longer needs to be proven. It simply is. And if they can't feel that, they were never listening to begin with. And you don't explain your evolution to someone who missed the entire process. You just show them through distance, through discipline, through unwavering calm. And that calm, that's what shakes them more than any argument ever could. That's what makes them realize the version of you they left behind is no longer here. That silence is not the gap between two conversations. It is the end of one chapter and the careful beginning of another. One where access is earned, not assumed. One where your voice is used with purpose, not out of habit. One where stillness becomes your signature. And that is the most powerful shift of all. 6. Stay rooted in your options, not fantasy. When someone reappears after disappearing, there's a dangerous temptation to interpret it as a sign. You start asking yourself, what if this is it? What if we finally get it right? What if everything that broke us before has now matured into something beautiful? It feels romantic, even spiritual, like destiny offering a second chance. But here's what Stoicism teaches us. Hope without examination is self-sabotage. Fantasy is seductive, but it's also a trap. It tricks you into abandoning the reality you've built for the illusion of something easier, something sweeter, something that doesn't exist. And when you fall for fantasy, you start giving up your power piece by piece. You close your doors to every other possibility. You delete your dating apps. You cancel plans. You emotionally lock yourself into someone who hasn't even proven they deserve that loyalty. You give them all your focus, your time, your heart, just because they came back. But showing up again doesn't make them right for you. It doesn't mean they're different. It doesn't mean they're capable. Sometimes it just means they're alone. Sometimes it means they got bored. Sometimes they remembered how good it felt to be loved by you, and they want that high again, but without the effort it takes to earn it. That's why you must stay rooted in your options. Not fantasy, not nostalgia, not the narrative you've been replaying in your head about what could have been. Options are not distractions. Options are your grounding force. They remind you that there are other lives, other people, other paths available to you. You are not limited to what left you. You are not obligated to pick up where someone else paused. You are not trapped in the chapter they abandoned. And the moment you believe you are, you shrink, you revert. You slip back into being emotionally one-dimensional, only thinking about them, only waiting on them, only giving to them. And that's how you lose yourself. That's how you fall back into dependence. That's how you give someone the power to define your worth again. But when you stay open, you stay free. You make choices, not assumptions. You explore, you expand, you observe. You stay connected to your life, your purpose, your movement. Because movement is everything. Fantasy makes you pause for a dream. Options keep you moving toward reality. Options don't mean you're playing games. They mean you're choosing with wisdom. You're watching what fits, not forcing what once failed. You're observing who adds to your peace, not who flatters your past. And when someone returns, you let that return compete with the rest of your life. You don't crown it as the answer. You treat it like what it is, a possibility, not a guarantee. Because a real relationship doesn't demand you shut down every door to prove you care. It encourages you to walk through doors with full eyes, full standards, full self-respect. You don't owe exclusivity to a reappearance. You owe clarity to yourself. And clarity only comes when you compare, when you explore, when you live beyond one outcome. If they truly want to be in your life, they'll understand that. They'll respect your pace. They'll accept that you're no longer just available because they decided to return. They'll earn their space. And if they can't, if they try to guilt you into cutting off your world for them, if they start talking about loyalty before they've shown consistency, that's not love. That's entitlement. That's ego. That's them wanting to skip the process and reclaim the position. And you do not hand out positions. They are earned through effort, character, and presence. So you stay open. You keep meeting people. You keep investing in your life. You don't live in a suspended dream, hoping this second chance will save you. You live in your worth. You live in your options. And you let reality decide, not your heart's old playlist. Because the woman who has options is the woman who doesn't settle, the woman who isn't manipulated, the woman who doesn't chase. She chooses, and choice is where your power lives. When you are not locked into an outcome, you are free, you are powerful, you are discerning, you don't react, you evaluate, you don't beg, you attract. And that's exactly what someone who left doesn't expect. They expect to come back and find you frozen in time, waiting, hoping, still emotionally available. But when they come back and find that you've moved on, not out of spite, but out of self-worth, it shakes them. It forces them to either grow or leave again. And either outcome is a win for you, because the fantasy might feel good. But real love, rooted love, only comes when two people choose each other from strength, not scarcity, not fear, not desperation. When both people know they could walk away at any time, but they don't. That's when you build something worth trusting, That's when you build something stable, something stoic. So yes, stay open, talk to new people. Keep your heart available, but only to what respects it. Keep your energy flowing, but only where it's met. Keep your hope alive, but grounded in reality, not illusion. You're not betraying anyone by having options. You're honoring yourself. You're saying, I don't shrink just because someone decided to come back. I expand. I keep moving. I keep living. And if they want to walk beside me, they'll have to catch up, not expect me to slow down. This is what Stoicism looks like in relationships. It's not about being cold. It's about being aware of your power, aware of your potential, aware of the traps that come when you make one person your entire emotional ecosystem. Love is not found through isolation. It's found through alignment. And you cannot align with someone unless they meet the level of effort, clarity, and peace you've cultivated in their absence. So stop apologizing for your standards. Stop hiding your options. Stop feeling guilty for continuing to build your life. You don't owe your pause to someone who pressed play on their own terms. You don't sacrifice motion for memories. You don't freeze your future for the chance to revisit an old story. That story ended. If it deserves a sequel, it will write itself in effort, not in fantasy, not in emotion, in reality, in presence, in proof. And if they can't match that reality, let the past stay where it belongs. Let the fantasy burn. Let your options bloom. Because you're no longer a woman who waits. You're a woman who moves, who builds, who chooses with vision. And if this message shook something loose inside you, if you finally feel the power of staying grounded in your worth instead of someone else's return, then claim it, own it. Type #1 in the comments if this spoke to the version of you that's done settling. Like the video if you're ready to stop waiting and start choosing. Subscribe for more if you know deep down this is the energy you want to live in from now on. This isn't the end of your story. This is the part where you realize the pen is and always has been in your hands. So here you are, clearer, stronger, quieter, not because nothing happened, but because everything did, and you survived it. You felt the pain of being left. You walked through the confusion of unanswered questions, the ache of abandonment, the seduction of fantasy. You lived it all, and now when they come back, you're not reacting from the same place. You're not responding out of longing. You're observing, you're grounded, because what once knocked you down now barely moves your energy. Not because you don't care, but because you've learned how to care without collapsing. That's the difference. This isn't about revenge. It's not about playing cold, hard, or indifferent. This is about emotional command. It's about learning that silence is a language, that boundaries are not barriers, they're invitations to deeper respect, that options are not distractions, they're reflections of your value. This is about knowing finally that someone's return does not equal reconciliation. That effort matters more than entrance. That timing reveals more than words ever could. This is not the fantasy you once craved. This is the reality you created. You are no longer waiting for someone to choose you. You have become the chooser. You are no longer trying to prove your worth. You are protecting it. You are no longer the woman who bleeds to keep someone else emotionally alive. You are the woman who rises in silence, speaks in power, and moves only for truth. This is what Stoic relationships are built on. Not just emotional intensity, but emotional integrity. Not just connection, but aligned connection. One that doesn't ask you to abandon yourself in the name of love. One that doesn't require you to trade your peace for their potential. You've already paid that price. You've already lived that lesson. And now you know better. You don't give the same access twice. You let effort speak. You ask why now, you pause, you hold still. And in that stillness, you see everything clearly. Who they are, what they want, and most importantly, who you've become in their absence. And once you see that clearly, you can't go back. Not emotionally, not energetically, not spiritually. You've stepped into something too sacred to sacrifice. You've become someone too aware to ignore the signs. This is your power now. Not just that you healed, but that you learned. And from here forward, everything changes. Because this time, you're not afraid to walk alone. You're not afraid to say no. You're not afraid to lose someone who once had the audacity to lose you. This time, the story doesn't end with their return. It begins with your refusal to return to what broke you. And that's freedom, that's peace, that's you, whole, steady, unshaken, unavailable to the version of love that used to confuse your kindness for permission. You didn't just survive them leaving, you rose in their absence. And no one gets to pull you back into a chapter you've already outgrown.